Hey everyone, hope you're doing great. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we'll dive into what if Deku never met Uraraka. Smash that subscribe button, and be sure to peek at the description below. Let's begin. The morning sun over Muzurifu was bright, the kind of aggressive, blinding white that promised a scorching day, yet the air bit with the lingering chill of late winter. For Izuku Midoriya, the cold wasn't atmospheric, it was internal. It sat in the marrow of his bones, a shivering vibration that had started 10 months ago and hadn't stopped since. He stood before the mirror in his bedroom, the black Gakurin uniform of Aldera Junior High feeling tighter than it had a few months ago. His muscles, forged in the hellfire of Dagoba Municipal Beach Park, pressed against the fabric. He wasn't the scrawny straw man he used to be. He was a vessel filled to the brim with a power so ancient and terrifying that simply thinking about it made his stomach turn over. One for all, he touched his chest. He could feel it there, a dormant ember waiting for a breath of air to turn into an inferno. Izuku! You're going to be late. Inko Midoriya's voice floated up from the kitchen, laced with that perpetual, trembling worry she wore like a second skin. Coming, Mom! Izuku squeaked. He grabbed his yellow backpack, the straps frayed from years of overuse, and took a deep breath. He looked at the poster of All Might on his wall, the hero standing amidst rubble, laughing, pointing at the camera. I am here. I am going, Izuku whispered to the poster, his voice lacking the conviction of his idol. He walked out of his room, leaving the safety of his shrine behind. The world outside was not a shrine. It was a testing ground. Today was the UA High School entrance exam. Today, he would either become a hero or remain a footnote in everyone else's story. The train ride was a blur of noise and claustrophobia. Izuku spent the entire commute muttering under his breath, reviewing notes from his hero analysis for the Future Notebook, Volume 13. He recited quirk classifications, counter-strategies for environmental hazards, and historical acceptance rates until the man sitting next to him shifted uncomfortably away. When he finally arrived at the massive glass and steel fortress that was UA High, the sheer scale of the place threatened to crush him. The gate was a towering archway, a mouth opening to swallow the hopefuls whole. Izuku walked forward, his red sneakers scuffing against the pavement. He was vibrating. His mind was racing so fast he could barely see straight. It's just an exam. Just an exam. All Might said I can do this. I ate the hair. I did the work. I just have to. He took a step, his foot catching on the slightly uneven lip of a paving stone. In a different universe, perhaps the fates would have been kind. Perhaps a girl with a gravity-defying quirk would have been walking by at that exact second. She might have reached out, tapped his shoulder or his bag, and suspended him in midair, saving him from embarrassment with a bubbly smile and a kind word. She might have said it was bad luck to fall on the exam day. She might have been the first peer to ever speak to him without a sneer. But gravity is a harsh mistress, and in this universe, she was unforgiving. Izuku pitched forward. His arms flailed, instinctively reaching for a purchase that wasn't there. He didn't float. He fell. Smack. The sound was wet and heavy. Izuku hit the concrete hard, his hands scraping against the grit to break his fall. His notebook skittered out of his open bag, sliding a few feet away. Oof. The wind left his lungs in a pained wheeze. The bustling crowd of examinees didn't stop. They parted around him like a river around a stone, a few glancing down with looks of mild pity or amusement, but most too focused on their own future to care about a clumsy boy on the ground. Pathetic. The voice was low, guttural, and familiar. Izuku froze. He looked up from the pavement to see Katsuki Bakugo walking past, hands in his pockets, his posture radiating arrogance. Bakugo didn't even look at him. He just kept walking, stepping over Izuku's scattered notebook as if it were trash. Get out of the road, Deku. You're blocking the way for the real heroes. Izuku scrambled to his knees, his face burning with a heat that rivaled the sun. Keikaken. But Bakugo was already gone, swallowed by the crowd. Izuku was alone. He hurriedly gathered his notebook, dusting off the grit, checking for tears in the paper. His palms were stinging, red and raw, small beads of blood welling up where the concrete had bitten deep. He stood up, wiping his hands on his trousers. No, kind stranger. No floating. No good luck. Just a scrape on his palms and the echo of the name Deku, useless, wooden doll, hanging in the air. Right, Izuku whispered, his voice trembling. Just watch where you're going, Izuku. He walked through the gate, his head down, trying to make himself as small as possible. The orientation hall was dark, lit only by the spotlights on the stage where the voice hero, present Mike, was screaming into a microphone. Everybody say hey. Silence. Izuku sat in the middle of a row, squeezed between a boy with a rocky exterior and a girl with vines for hair. He was hunched over his notebook, frantically sketching the layout of the battle centers as President Mike explained them. Robots. 4 types. Points corresponding to difficulty. The 0 pointer is a gimmick, avoid at all costs. This is amazing, Izuku muttered, the tip of his pen flying across the page. Yui has the budget to simulate urban combat on a massive scale. If they use the standard robotic models, their weak points are likely the joints or the sensors. But if they've reinforced them, then blunt force is the only option, which means... Excuse me, the voice cut through Izuku's muttering like a knife. Izuku jumped, his pen skidding across the paper. A tall boy with glasses and blue hair stood up in the row below him. He pointed a stiff hand directly at Izuku. The spotlight seemed to catch the boy's glasses, turning them opaque. You with the curly hair, the boy announced, his voice projecting clearly across the silent auditorium. You've been muttering this entire time. It's distracting. If you're here on a sightseeing trip, then you should leave immediately. You are disrupting those of us who are serious about this. The hall went deathly quiet. Hundreds of eyes turned to look at Izuku. Izuku shrank. He felt like he was imploding. In another timeline, someone might have giggled, or the tension might have been diffused by a friendly face later. Here, he was just the annoyance. The weird kid. I'm sorry, Izuku whispered, sinking so low in his seat he was practically under it. I'm sorry. And you? The boy turned to present Mike. The handout says there are 4 robots, but you've only discussed 3. If this is a misprint, it's a shameful error for you. Present Mike laughed it off, explaining the 0 pointer, but the damage was done. Izuku sat in misery for the rest of the presentation, feeling the judgmental stares of the students around him. The isolation was absolute. He wasn't part of a cohort. He was an outlier. A mistake. Battle Center B. The bus ride to the testing ground was silent. Izuku stood near the back, holding the strap, his knuckles white. He looked around the bus. He saw the boy with glasses, Tenya Ida, he gathered from the murmurs, standing near the front, looking disciplined and intense. He saw a boy with a sparkly naval laser checking his reflection in the window. He looked for something. Someone. A softness in the hard edges of the competition. But everyone wore masks of determination. When they disembarked, they stood before a massive gate leading into a replica city. It was staggering. Buildings stretched up toward the sky, alleyways wound into darkness. It was a playground for gods. Izuku stood at the back of the pack. His heart was hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. One for all. He had to use it. But he'd never used it before. All Might had said his body was ready, but was his mind? What if I break? What if I miss? What if I have a heart attack before I even throw a punch? He looked at his hands. The scrapes from the fall earlier were scabbing over. A reminder of his clumsiness. He saw Ida stretching his calves a few meters away. Izuku took a shaky breath. He should apologize for the muttering. He should try to make a connection, show he wasn't just a distraction. He took a step forward. Excuse me. Ida turned, his eyes narrowing behind his lenses. You again. What is it? Are you attempting to distract me further? The exam is about to commence. And no. Izuku stammered, waving his hands. I wanted to say good luck, and sorry about earlier. If you have time to exchange pleasantries, you aren't taking this seriously, Ida said, turning his back. We are rivals here, not friends. Izuku's mouth snapped shut. He lowered his hand. Rivals, right. That's what this was. He looked around. No one was smiling. No one was here to make friends. They were here to survive, and start Present Mick's voice boomed from a tower overlooking the city. The crowd hesitated for a fraction of a second. What's wrong? There are no countdowns in real fights. Go! 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 The mass of students surged forward like a tidal wave. Izuku was buffeted by shoulders and elbows. He stumbled, nearly falling again, but caught his balance. By the time he righted himself, the pack was already entering the city. Wait! Wait for me! Izuku ran. He sprinted into the urban maze, his breath hitching. The sounds of destruction began immediately. Explosions. The screech of tearing metal. Shouts of die! And take that! Izuku turned a corner and skidded to a halt. A one-pointer, a wheeled drone with a red eye, lay smoking in the street, a hole punched through its chassis. Too slow! A student with extendable fingers shouted, rushing past him to the next target. Izuku ran down an alleyway. I need a target. I need points. Just one. He emerged onto a main street. A three-pointer, a massive, hulking machine with missiles, landed with a crash in front of him. Target acquired, the robot droned. Izuku froze. This was it. He clenched his fist. He channeled the power. He felt the red veins of one for all coursing through his arm. Smash it. Just smash it. But his feet were glued to the pavement. The fear was paralyzing. This wasn't a beach cleanup. This was a metal monster designed to hurt him. Before he could move, a laser beam sliced through the robot's head. It exploded in a shower of sparks. Merci! The blond boy with the navel laser struck a pose. You froze, mon ami. A hero must never freeze. He darted away. Izuku stood there, shaking. The smoke from the destroyed robot washed over him. 0 points. He ran again. Time blurred. Every time he found a robot, someone else was faster. Someone else was stronger. Someone else was more confident. A girl with acid melted a robot he was aiming for. A boy with 6 arms pummeled a 2-pointer into scrap before Izuku could even wind up a punch. 6 minutes left. Present Mike announced. No, 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 Izuku panted, sweat stinging his eyes. He turned a corner desperate. He hadn't thrown a single punch. The power of the greatest hero in the world was sitting in his veins, and he was too scared to let it out. I'm not a hero, a dark voice whispered in his ear. It sounded like Bakugo. I'm just a pebble on the side of the road. I'm Deku. 2 minutes remaining. Panic, cold and sharp, pierced his chest. He was going to fail. After everything. After the slime villain, after the training, after eating the hair. He was going to fail because he was too slow. The ground began to tremble. It started as a vibration in the soles of his shoes, then grew to a rattle that shook the glass in the windows of the fake skyscrapers. Boom, boom. At the far end of the main thoroughfare, the buildings parted. Dust billowed up in a choking cloud. From the haze emerged a nightmare, the 0-pointer. It was colossal. It dwarfed the buildings around it, a green metal titan that blocked out the sun. Its single red eye scanned the street, and it raised a fist the size of a house, smashing it down into the pavement. The shockwave knocked Izuku off his feet. He hit the ground, rolling. Run! It's the 0-pointer! Get out of here! The other examinees broke. The confidence that had defined them moments ago shattered. They turned and fled, a stampede of quirks running away from the overwhelming force. Izuku scrambled backward, crab walking on his hands and feet. His terror was absolute. Run. You have to run. You have 0 points, but if you die, you have nothing. He turned to flee. Help! The voice was faint, buried under the sound of crumbling concrete and groaning metal. Izuku stopped. His body locked up. It was the instinct, the same instinct that had made him run toward the slime villain to save Bakugo. It overrode the fear. It overrode the logic. He looked back. Through the dust, he saw him. It was the boy with glasses. Tenya Ida? Ida had been directing others away, acting the leader, but the 0-pointer's initial strike had collapsed the facade of a nearby building. A massive slab of concrete had fallen, pinning Ida's legs. The engine-legged boy was struggling, his face twisted in pain and panic. He pushed at the concrete, but it was too heavy. The 0-pointer was looming over him, its tracks grinding the pavement as it advanced. It didn't care about the student. It was a machine programmed to destroy the city, and Ida was just debris in its path. Izuku looked around. The others were gone. They were fleeing. He's going to die. The thought was stark. He was mean to me. He embarrassed me. He thinks I'm a joke. It didn't matter. Izuku's legs moved before his brain gave the order. He didn't float. He didn't feel light. He felt heavy, weighted down by the terror, but he ran anyway. He sprinted toward the Titan, screaming to force the air into his lungs. Stop! Izuku shrieked, though the robot couldn't hear him. He reached the spot where Ida was trapped. The zero-pointer's massive metal hand was raising up for another strike, directly above them. Ida looked up, eyes wide behind his crooked glasses. He saw the curly-haired boy, the mutterer, the distraction, skid to a halt beside him. You! Ida gasped. Run! Izuku ignored him. He looked up at the robot. It was too big. He couldn't lift the concrete slab and get Ida out in time. He had to stop the threat. He crouched. One for all. Full cowling? No, I don't know how. Just squeeze your buttocks and yell. Smash! Izuku channeled everything. He pulled the power from the tips of his toes, dragging it through the knots of his fear, pulling it all into his legs. The concrete beneath his sneakers cracked as he engaged the quirk. With a roar that tore at his throat, Izuku launched himself into the air. He shot upward like a bullet, the G-force pressing his eyes shut. The wind whipped past his ears. He soared past the first story, the second, the third. He was level with the robot's face. The zero-pointer's eye glowed ominously. Izuku pulled his right arm back. He felt the power rush into the limb, expanding, tearing, burning. It was too much power for one vessel. Save him, Detroit. Izuku swung. His fist connected with the metal faceplate of the Titan. Smayawash. The impact was deafening. The air pressure alone shattered the windows of the surrounding buildings for 3 blocks. The metal face of the zero-pointer didn't just dent, it crumpled. The force traveled through the machine's neck, severing the connection, blowing the back of its head out in a shower of gears and oil. The massive robot tipped backward, groaning as its internal systems failed. It crashed to the ground away from Ida, shaking the entire city. High in the air, Izuku hung suspended for a moment of impossible stillness. Then, the pain hit. His right arm was purple, twisted, flapping uselessly in the wind. His legs, having taken the brunt of the jump, were shattered, the bones splintered. And then, gravity took hold. I'm falling. Izuku plummeted. The ground rushed up to meet him. I need to land? I need to float? No, I can't float. He looked down. The pavement was coming fast. Think. Think. Use the arm. The other arm. Tears streamed from his eyes, whipped away by the wind. He grit his teeth, fighting the black spots dancing in his vision. I have to break my other arm to save my life. It was a cruel calculus. As the ground approached, Izuku swung his left arm, his only good limb, toward the asphalt. He activated one for all one last time, aiming not at a villain, but at the empty air. Smash! He released a blast of wind pressure. It slammed against the ground, creating a cushion of air that slowed his descent violently. Crack! His left arm snapped under the recoil. Izuku tumbled through the air cushion, his body ragdolling. He hit the ground, rolling brutally, skin shredding against the pavement. He came to a stop a few meters away from where Ida lay trapped. Silence descended on Battle Center B. Izuku lay on his back, staring up at the fake blue sky. Every nerve ending in his body was screaming. Both arms were broken. Both legs were broken. He was a ruin of a boy. He coughed, tasting copper. He wheezed. I did it. There was a shifting of rubble nearby. Tenya Ida had managed to wiggle free now that the robot's advance had stopped shaking the ground. He dragged himself over to where Izuku lay. Ida's face was pale, stripped of its earlier arrogance. He looked at Izuku's mangled limbs with horrified awe. You! Ida whispered. You sacrificed your own body, to save me? After I was so rude to you? Izuku couldn't turn his head. He just stared at the sky. The pain was making the world go gray. Is everyone okay? Izuku rasped. Ida stared at him. The boy had 0 points. He had failed the exam. And he was asking if everyone else was okay. Yes, Ida said, his voice thick with emotion. Yes. We are safe. Good. Izuku whispered. His eyes fluttered shut. Time's up. Present Mick's voice echoed in the distance. It was over. Izuku didn't hear the footsteps of the other students slowly returning, peeking out from alleyways to see the destruction. He didn't hear the whispers of shock. He took that thing down in one hit? Who is he? Is he dead? There was no cheering. In another life, a girl might have been vomiting rainbows nearby, rallying the others to recognize his heroism. Here, there was only shock. The violence of Izuku's power was terrifying to behold. He hadn't just defeated the robot, he had obliterated it, and nearly obliterated himself in the process. It wasn't inspiring in the traditional sense. It was tragic. A small, hunched figure made her way through the crowd. Recovery girl. Oh dearie me, she sighed, looking down at Izuku. You really overdid it, didn't you? She knelt beside him, her lips extending to kiss his forehead. Izuku's consciousness faded completely, the darkness swallowing him. His last thought wasn't of triumph. It was of the silence. The overwhelming, crushing silence of a hero who stands alone. 1 week later, the apartment was quiet. Izuku sat at the dining table, his arms and legs heavily bandaged. He held a piece of fish with chopsticks using his mouth, a skill he had been forced to learn quickly over the last few days. His mother Inko sat across from him, looking like she had aged 10 years in a week. She hadn't scolded him. She had just cried when she saw him in the hospital bed. The letter lay on the table. Sealed. Izuku stared at it. I can open it for you, Izuku, Inko said softly. Izuku shook his head. He spat the chopsticks onto the plate. I'll do it. He used his bandaged, stiff fingers to clumsily tear the envelope. It took him 5 minutes of painful struggle. He didn't ask for help. A metal disc slid out. A hologram projected onto the wall. I am here as a projection. All Might. Izuku watched, his heart numb. All Might spoke of the written exam. Izuku had passed that with flying colors. But the practical, 0 combat points, All Might said, his voice dropping an octave. A failing grade. Izuku looked down at his lap. He knew it. He had wasted one for all. He had broken his body for nothing. He was just a quirkless kid who got lucky for 1 second and paid the price. But All Might shouted. How can a hero course reject someone who saves others and does the right thing? Izuku looked up. The video cut to a shaky clip. It was the judge's room. The kid jumped in without hesitation. That was a dangerous level of power, but the intent was pure. He saved the examinee from severe injury. Then, a clip played from the exam day. It was Tenya Ida, standing in front of the judges, bowing stiffly. I request that you transfer some of my points to him. Ida shouted in the video. He sacrificed his placement to save me. If this exam does not reward such action, then it is flawed. Izuku's eyes widened. Ida, the boy who had yelled at him? All Might returned to the screen. Rescue points. A specialized metric for true heroism. Izuku Midoriya. 60 rescue points. The score tally rolled up. Izuku Midoriya, 60 points. You pass, All Might said, extending a hand toward the camera. Come, young Midoriya. This is your hero academia. The hologram clicked off. Izuku sat in the silence of his kitchen. Tears welled in his eyes, hot and fast. He sobbed, his shoulders shaking. He had made it. He was going to UA. But as he cried, he felt a strange hollowness. Ida had spoken up for him out of duty, out of a strict moral code of repayment. It was transactional. You saved me, I save you. There was no clip of a girl saying, he looks plain, but he shines. There was no bubbling enthusiasm about his spirit. There was just the cold, hard logic of a rescue. He was a hero because he had destroyed a robot and survived. Izuku looked at his bandaged hands. He thought about the school year ahead. He thought about Bakugo. He thought about the silence in the exam hall. I'll do it, Izuku whispered to the empty air. I'll be the greatest hero. But the voice in his head added a quiet addendum. Even if I have to do it alone. He stood up, wincing as his healing legs took his weight. He walked to the window and looked out at the city. Somewhere out there, his classmates were celebrating. Somewhere, Ochako Uraraka was celebrating her own victory, unaware that in another life, she was supposed to be his best friend. Izuku pressed his hand against the glass. The reflection showed a boy with wild hair and eyes that were a little harder, a little dimmer than they should have been. The invisible boy had become visible, but he was still untouchable. April arrived not with a gentle bloom of cherry blossoms, but with a stiff, suffocating pressure that settled directly on Izuku Midoriya's chest. The UA acceptance letter, heavy with the weight of All Might's projection and the confusing, charitable points from Tenya Ida, was tucked safely in his desk at home, but the reality of it felt like a dream he was struggling to wake up from. He stood in front of the bathroom mirror, tying his tie. His fingers, still stiff and aching from the bone-deep trauma of the entrance exam, fumbled with the red knot. He tried once. Twice. On the third try, he managed a respectable shape. He looked at his reflection. The gray blazer of UA High sat on his shoulders. It was a uniform of prestige, a fabric that screamed elite. But the boy wearing it looked haunted. His eyes were shadowed, dark circles testifying to nights spent replaying the sensation of his limbs shattering against the pavement. "I made it," he whispered to the glass. "I'm here." The words felt hollow. In his mind, he kept seeing the zero-pointer falling. He kept seeing Ida's shocked, pitying face. He kept seeing the empty space around him as he walked out of the exam site. "Izuku! You'll miss the train." His mother's voice snapped him back to the present. He grabbed his yellow backpack, newly stitched where it had torn during the exam, and headed for the door. "I'm leaving, Izuku." Inko bustled into the hallway, her hands fluttering. She smoothed his collar, her eyes wet. You look so handsome. My little hero." Izuku forced a smile. It was brittle. "Thanks, Mom. I have to go." He stepped out into the world. The walk to the station was mechanical. He kept his head down, muttering quirk analysis under his breath to drown out the anxiety. UA. The pinnacle. The top. Everyone there will be a monster. Everyone there will have control. On the train, he stood in the corner. He saw other students in UA uniforms. A group of 3 girls were laughing near the doors. A boy with a tail was reading a book. They seemed to fit. They occupied the space with an easy confidence. Izuku felt like an imposter who had snuck in through the back door, holding a ticket paid for by someone else's pity. The corridors of UA High were labyrinthine, designed to intimidate. The ceilings were high, the windows vast. Izuku navigated them by memory of the map he had memorized the night before. 1A, 1A. Where is it? He turned a corner and saw it. The door. It was massive, easily 10 feet tall, towering over him like a judgment. A bold red 1A was painted on the surface. Izuku stood before it, his hand trembling as he reached for the handle. This is it. The start of my life. Please let it be a normal class. Please let me blend in. Please don't let Kaken be. He slid the door open. Don't put your feet on the desk. The shout was loud, authoritative, and agonizingly familiar. Izuku froze in the doorway. Inside, the classroom was bathed in morning light. At a desk in the middle row, Katsuki Bakugo sat with his feet propped up, an expression of utter boredom on his face. Standing over him, chopping the air with a stiff hand, was Tenya Ida. Don't you think that's rude to the UA upperclassmen and the people who made this desk? Ida demanded, his glasses flashing. Bakugo scoffed, a cruel smirk playing on his lips. Nope. What junior high did you go to, you side character? I attended semi-private academy. My name is Tenya Ida. Sama? So you're a damn elite, huh? Bakugo's eyes lit up with predatory amusement. Looks like I'll have fun crushing you. Crushing me? Cruel. Do you truly aim to be a hero? Izuku swallowed dryly. It's them. Both of them. The 2 people who represented his twin anxieties. The bully who knew his weakness, and the elite who had witnessed his incompetence. He took a step backward, considering flight. Ida turned. His sensors must have picked up the movement. He locked eyes with Izuku. The room went quiet. In another world, perhaps a bubbly girl would have appeared behind Izuku right then. She might have cheered, "Oh! It's the curly-haired boy." She might have broken the tension with her warmth, giving Izuku an ally, a shield against the intense stares. But she wasn't there. Ida straightened up. He marched toward the door. Izuku flinched, expecting a reprimand. He's going to tell everyone I just froze. He's going to tell them I have 0 combat points. Ida stopped 2 feet away. He looked stiff, uncomfortable. Midoriya, Ida said. His voice wasn't warm. It was formal, like a soldier reporting to a superior he didn't quite understand. Good morning. Hi, Izuku squeaked. I am Tenya Ida, he said, though Izuku already knew. I must apologize. I misjudged you during the entrance exam. I thought you were merely a distraction, but you perceived the true nature of the test, the rescue component, while I was blinded by the superficial objective. I respect your insight. The words were complimentary, but the tone was clinical. It was an admission of a calculation error, not an offer of friendship. Oh, Izuku rubbed the back of his neck, feeling the heat rise in his cheeks. I didn't. My body moved. I didn't really figure anything out. Ha! Bakugo's laugh cut through the air. He turned in his seat, glaring at Izuku. Don't give him too much credit, Four Eyes. Whatever that nerd did, he probably broke every bone in his body doing it. He's a glass cannon without the cannon. Ida frowned at Bakugo but didn't defend Izuku further. He had said his piece. He turned and walked back to his seat. Izuku was left standing at the front of the class. He looked around. The classroom was filling up. A boy with red and white hair sat silently in the back, radiating a cold aura. A bird-headed boy sat with his arms crossed, eyes closed. Then, the door opened behind Izuku. He flinched and stepped aside. A girl walked in. She had a bob of brown hair and round, pink cheeks. Ochako Uraraka. Izuku recognized her from the exam orientation, though they had been in different battle centers. She looked tired, anxious, clutching her bag straps tight. Izuku opened his mouth. A reflex. He wanted to say hello. He wanted to say, I'm nervous too, but Uraraka didn't look at him. Her eyes scanned the room, landing on a girl with frog-like features, Tsuyu Ajiri. Uraraka's face lit up with relief. She hurried past Izuku, the air displacing around him as she moved. Tsuyu-chan! Uraraka called out, her voice a little too loud, breathless. I'm so glad you're in this class. I was so scared I wouldn't know anyone from the written exams. Ribbit. Call me Tsu, the frog girl said, nodding. Uraraka pulled up a chair next to her, immediately launching into a whispered conversation about how intimidating the building was. Izuku stood alone by the podium. He was invisible. The realization hit him with the force of a physical blow. He wasn't the plain-looking boy who saved the girl. He wasn't Deku the hopeful. He was just there. An anomaly in the corner. He walked to his desk, seat 18, behind Bakugo, and sat down. He pulled out his notebook and stared at the blank page. The chatter of the classroom washed over him. Groups were forming. Bonds were being knit in real time. I am alone. The thought was clinical. He began to analyze it. Being alone has tactical disadvantages. Information sharing is limited. Support in team exercises will be minimal. I need to be self-sufficient. If you're just here to make friends, you can pack up your stuff and leave. The voice came from the floor. The class froze. The chatter died instantly. Lying in the doorway, wrapped in a yellow sleeping bag like a monolithic caterpillar, was a man with messy black hair and bloodshot eyes. He sucked on a jelly pouch, staring at them with utter disinterest. Izuku's heart hammered. A pro-hero? No, he looks like a vagrant. But the aura. The man unzipped the bag and stood up. He looked exhausted. It took you 8 seconds to quiet down. Time is limited. You kids aren't rational enough. He stepped up to the podium. I'm your homeroom teacher, Shota Aizawa. Nice to meet you. Homeroom teacher? The class's collective mental gasp was audible. Aizawa reached into his sleeping bag and pulled out a blue gym uniform. He tossed it onto the first desk. Put these on and head out to the grounds, he said, his voice flat. We're doing a quirk apprehension test. The changing room was a silent affair for the boys. There was the rustle of fabric and the thud of lockers closing. Izuku took off his shirt, turning toward the wall. He was conscious of the scars, not just the fresh, pink marks from the exam that recovery girl had healed, but the older, smaller scars from years of roughhousing with Kaken. And then there was his build. He was muscular now, dense with the power All Might had bestowed upon him, but compared to the others, he looked small. Shoji, the boy with multiple arms, was a tank. Sato, the guy with the sugar quirk, was built like a wrestler. Even Mineta, the tiny boy, seemed to have a bouncy confidence that Izuku lacked. "Hey, a redhead with spiky hair," Kirishima said, slapping Ida on the back. That was manly, standing up to Bakugo like that. "I'm Eijiro Kirishima." "Tenya Ida replied, adjusting his glasses. "I was merely enforcing the code of conduct. Still, pretty cool." Izuku pulled his gym shirt over his head quickly. No one spoke to him. Why would they? He was the kid who broke his bones and almost failed. A liability. They walked out onto the pea grounds. The sun was high now, baking the dirt. "A quirk apprehension test?" Uraraka asked, tilting her head. "What about the entrance ceremony? The orientation?" Aizawa stood with his back to them. "If you're going to become a hero, you don't have time for such leisurely events." He turned, his dark eyes sweeping over the 20 students. UA's selling point is how unrestricted its school traditions are. That's also how the teachers run their classes. He held up a softball. "You kids have been doing these tests since junior high, right? 50-meter dash, grip strength, standing long jump, and so on. But you were never allowed to use your quirks. The country is still trying to pretend everyone is created equal by banning quirks in sports. It's not rational." He looked at Bakugo. "Bakugo, you finished at the top of the practical exam, right? In junior high, what was your best result for the softball throw?" 67 meters, Bakugo grunted. "Try doing it with your quirk." Bakugo stepped into the circle. He grinned, stretching his arms. A predator entering his domain. "Anything goes, just stay in the circle," Aizawa said. Bakugo wound up. "Dai-ai!" Boom! An explosion erupted from his palm, propelling the ball into the stratosphere with a trail of smoke. Izuku flinched at the sound. It was the sound of his childhood nightmares. Aizawa held up a device. 705.2 meters. Whoa! 700 meters? That's insane! We can use our quirks as much as we want? This is going to be awesome! The class erupted in excitement. This was what they were here for. The freedom to be powerful. Izuku didn't smile. He felt a cold knot of dread tighten in his stomach. He looked at his hands. "I can't control it. If I use it, I break. If I don't use it." "Awesome, you say?" Aizawa's voice dropped. The temperature on the field seemed to plummet 10 degrees. "You have 3 years to become a hero," Aizawa said, his hair slightly rising, giving him a demonic appearance. "Will you have an attitude like that the whole time?" He grinned. It wasn't a nice smile. "All right. Whoever comes in last place in all 8 tests will be judged to have no potential." He swept his gaze over them, lingering for a fraction of a second on Izuku, "and will be punished with expulsion." The silence that followed was absolute. "Expulsion?" Uraraka shrieked. "But it's the first day of school." "That's too unfair. Natural disasters, big accidents, and selfish villains," Aizawa droned. "Calamities whose time or place can't be predicted. Japan is covered with unfairness. Heroes are the ones who reverse those situations. If you wanted to go talk to your friends at Mickey D's after school, too bad. For the next 3 years, Yui will do all it can to give you one hardship after another." He beckoned with a finger. "Go beyond. Plus ultra. Overcome it with all you've got." Izuku felt the blood drain from his face. "Last place is expelled." He looked at the others. They looked shocked, but determined. They had tools. They had engines, zero gravity, explosions, acid creation. Izuku had a nuclear bomb he didn't know how to detonate without killing himself. "I'm going to go home," Izuku thought, his breath hitching. "I'm going to be expelled on the first day, and All Might will be disappointed, and Mom will cry, and Kaken will laugh." The panic was a rising tide. He needed a lifeline. He looked around instinctively for someone to share a worried glance with. Uraraka was looking at Ida, her face determined. Ida was adjusting his glasses, focused. Bakugo was staring at Aizawa with a manic grin. Izuku was alone in the pit. Think, Izuku. Think. Rationality. Aizawa likes rationality. If I break my arm in the first test, I can't do the others. I'll come in last anyway. I have to save it. I have to rely on my base stats until the absolute last moment. Test 1, 50-meter dash. Ida was up first. He was a machine. 3.04 seconds. Like a fish in water, the frog girl noted. Izuku stepped up to the line against Bakugo. On your mark. Izuku tensed. Just run. Just run. Start. Bakugo exploded forward, using his blast to propel himself. 4.13 seconds. Izuku sprinted, his arms pumping, his form perfect from the beach training. But he was just a human. 7.02 seconds. He panted, hands on his knees. It wasn't a bad time for a human. But here? It was mediocre. Test 2, grip strength. Izuku squeezed the device until his knuckles turned white. 56 kilograms. Next to him, the large boy Mizo Shoji squeezed. 540 kilograms. Wow! Siro exclaimed. He's like a gorilla. Izuku stared at his own hand. Average. Just average. Test 3, standing long jump. Aoyama used his naval laser to fly across. Bakugo blasted across. The frog girl jumped effortlessly. Izuku jumped. He cleared the sand pit, barely. It was a good jump. A normal jump. He landed in the sand, dusting off his knees. He caught Aizawa writing something on a clipboard. The teacher's face was unreadable. That was worse than a scowl. Test 4, repeated sidesteps. Mineta, the small boy with grape hair, bounced back and forth like a pinball using his sticky spheres. He was incredible. Izuku did the sidesteps. Left. Right. Left. Right. He was fast, but he was mortal. By the time the 5th test, the ball throw, arrived, Izuku was vibrating with terror. He had been watching the scores. He wasn't sure where he stood, but it was low. Hagakure, the invisible girl, was struggling physically, but she had surely done better in the sprint, or jump with some trick he hadn't seen. Then, it was Uraraka's turn. She stepped into the circle. She took a deep breath, touched the ball with her fingertips, and threw it. It didn't fly fast. It just floated. It kept going. And going. Up into the clouds. Infinity? The class screamed as Aizawa showed the result. Uraraka pumped her fist, a wide smile on her face. Yes, she turned back to the class. Did you see that, Tsu? Ribbit. That's an amazing score, Ochako-chan. Izuku stared at the infinity symbol. She's incredible. She manipulates gravity. That explains why she didn't get hurt in the exam. She can negate falls. It's a versatile quirk. His analysis was running on overdrive, a defense mechanism against the encroaching doom. Midoriya, Aizawa called. Izuku jumped. You're up. The walk to the circle felt like walking to the gallows. The dirt crunched under his red sneakers. Izuku stood in the center. He held the ball. It felt heavy. This is it, he thought. I'm near the bottom. If I don't get a high score here, it's over. He looked at Aizawa. The teacher was watching him like a hawk. I have to use one for all. But if I use it, my arm breaks. The pain. He remembered the crunch of his bones against the robot. The agony that blinded him. But if I don't use it, I'm expelled. The choice was binary. Pain or failure. I have to do it. Izuku widened his stance. He gripped the ball. He could feel the eyes of the class on his back. Bakugo's burning glare. Ida's scrutiny. Uraraka's curiosity. One for all. 100%. He felt the power flood his arm. The red veins glowed under his skin. The air crackled. Smash! He whipped his arm forward, screaming internally. The ball left his hand. It flew 46 meters. It landed with a pathetic thud on the grass. Izuku stood there, his arm extended. It wasn't broken. But the ball hadn't gone anywhere. What? He looked at his hand. The power had vanished right at the moment of release. I erased your quirk. The voice was dry and irritated. Izuku turned. Aizawa's hair was floating, defying gravity. His scarf, the capture weapon, was floating around him. His eyes glowed a piercing red. That entrance exam was definitely not rational enough, Aizawa said, stepping closer. He looked like a nightmare. Even a kid like you was accepted. You! Izuku gasped, recognizing the goggles hanging around his neck. You're the Erasure hero, Eraserhead, the class murmured. Eraserhead? Never heard of him. He's an underground hero, Izuku whispered, almost to himself. Aizawa ignored the chatter. He closed the distance, his scarf lashing out to wrap around Izuku, pulling him in close. They were nose to nose. From what I saw, you can't control your quirk, can you? Aizawa hissed. Do you intend to become incapacitated again and have someone save you? And no. That's what happened in the exam. Aizawa cut him off brutally. You saved someone, sure. But then you were useless. A lump of meat on the pavement. Izuku flinched. The words cut deep because they were true. There is no cruel, floating girl here to catch you this time, Aizawa whispered. There is no recovery girl on the battlefield. If you save one person and then become a liability, you are just a casualty waiting to happen. He leaned in, his eyes narrowing. You have zero potential. Izuku stopped breathing. Zero potential. The words echoed in the silence of his mind. It was what the doctor had told him when he was 4. It was what Bakugo had told him for 10 years. Aizawa blinked. His hair fell back down. I've returned your quirk. He released Izuku from the scarf and walked back to the line. You have 2 throws left. Hurry up and get it over with. Izuku stood in the circle, trembling. He looked at his hands. He's right. I can't control it. I'm useless. He looked back at the class. They were looking at him with a mix of pity and confusion. Was he being scolded? I think his quirk is just super strength, but he breaks. There was no voice shouting, you can do it, Deku. There was no Uraraka clenching her fists for him. She was looking at Aizawa with fear, worried about her own standing. Izuku was completely, utterly alone. If I give up now, I'm done. I go back to being quirkless. I go back to nothing. He looked at the ball. Aizawa said I have zero potential because I hurt myself. So, I just have to minimize the damage. I need to be rational. He picked up the ball. He closed his eyes. He didn't think about saving anyone. He didn't think about All Might. He thought about survival. Focus. He visualized the egg in the microwave. Don't let it explode. He wound up. The motion was smooth, not the whole arm. That's inefficient. He channeled the power. He felt the river of energy rushing through his shoulder, his elbow. Stop it there. He forced the energy down, concentrating it. Just the finger. He pushed the power into the tip of his right index finger. Smash! He snapped the ball at the last second. Crack! The sound was like a gunshot. A shockwave blasted dust into the air. The ball rocketed into the sky, piercing the clouds with a force that rivaled Bakugo's explosion. Pain shot up his arm. His finger was purple, swollen, broken. Izuku cradled his hand, gritting his teeth against the agony. He panted, sweat dripping down his nose. He looked at Aizawa. The teacher was looking at the device. He turned it around. 705.3 meters. 0.1 meters farther than Bakugo. Izuku clenched his trembling, broken fist. He looked Aizawa in the eye. He didn't smile. He didn't cheer. Teacher. Izuku rasped, his voice shaking with pain and defiance. I can still move. Aizawa's eyes widened slightly. Then, a slow, terrifying grin spread across his face. Ho! The class reaction. The silence was broken. He got over 700 meters. Finally, a hero-like record. Wait, look at his finger. It's busted. That's gross. The reactions weren't purely positive. They were horrified. To these students, quirks were extensions of their bodies, natural and fluid. To see someone mutilate themselves to use their power was disturbing. What the hell? The growl was low, animalistic. Izuku froze. Bakugo was standing there, his hands smoking. His eyes were wide, pupils dilated to pinpoints. He looked like he was witnessing a ghost come to life. DKU, Bakugo lunged. You bastard! Tell me what's going on. He sprinted toward the circle, explosions popping in his palms. He was going to kill him. Izuku knew it. Izuku raised his arms, terrified. I can't fight him. Not with a broken finger. Suddenly, Aizawa's scarf shot out. It wrapped around Bakugo, binding his arms to his torso. Gah! What is this cloth? Bakugo struggled. It's a capture weapon made of carbon fiber and a special metal alloy, Aizawa muttered through his teeth. Geez, stop making me use my quirk. I have dry eye, he glared at Bakugo. We're wasting time. Next preparation. He released Bakugo. Bakugo stood there, panting, glaring at Izuku. You were quirkless. Izuku didn't answer. He didn't try to explain. He just stepped out of the circle, clutching his broken finger. He walked past Bakugo. He didn't look at him. He walked to the back of the group. Is your finger okay? Izuku looked up. It was Uraraka. She was looking at his hand with a grimace. Izuku stammered. This was it. The interaction. That looks really painful, she said, wincing. You should probably see the nurse after this. Aizawa-sensei is really scary, huh? Why yeah, Izuku said. Well, good luck with the rest, she said, offering a polite, distant smile. Then she turned back to Ajiri. I hope the endurance run isn't next, my calves are burning. Izuku stood there. That was it. No spark. No connection. Just a polite concern for a classmate who had injured himself. She didn't see a hero. She saw a boy who was hurting himself to keep up. The rest of the tests were a blur of pain. Sit-ups. Izuku struggled, his broken finger throbbing with every movement. Seated toe touch. He was average. Distance run. He grit his teeth and ran, ignoring the pulsing agony in his hand. By the time the 8th test concluded, the sun was dipping lower in the sky. The class gathered around Aizawa, exhausted. Okay, I'll quickly present the results, Aizawa said. The total is simply the marks you got from each test. It's a waste of time to explain verbally, so I'll show you the rankings. He pressed a button on a remote. A hologram appeared. Izuku closed his eyes. He didn't want to look. I failed. I definitely failed. He opened one eye. 1. Momo Yaoyorozu. 2. Shoto Todoroki. 3. Katsuki Bakugo. He scanned down. 10. Ochako Uraraka. He scanned lower. 20. Izuku Midoriya. The bottom. Dead last. Izuku felt the ground disappear beneath his feet. The world went silent. It's over. It's all over. He looked at his hands. I did everything I could. I was rational. I saved my arm. And it wasn't enough. By the way, Aizawa said, flicking the hologram off. I was lying about the expulsion. The class froze. Aizawa grinned, a wide, shit-eating grin. It was a logical ruse to draw out the upper limits of your quirks. Wait, what? The class screamed in unison. Izuku's jaw dropped. His knees buckled, and he almost fell over. Of course it was a lie, the tall girl with the ponytail, Yaoyorozu said with a sigh. It should have been obvious if you thought about it. I didn't notice. Cyril whispered. That was a little scary. Uraraka exhaled, hand on her chest. Izuku stared at the ground. Relief washed over him, but it was cold. A lie? He looked up at Aizawa. The teacher was walking away. With that, we're done, Aizawa said over his shoulder. There are handouts with the curriculum in the classroom. Midoriya. Izuku stiffened. Have Recovery Girl fix you up. Tomorrow's trials are going to be harder. Don't think you can survive on logical ruses forever. Aizawa tossed a slip of paper at him. A pass to the infirmary. The walk home. The infirmary smelled of antiseptic. Recovery Girl scolded him, kissed his finger, which healed instantly but drained his stamina, and sent him on his way. He was exhausted. Izuku walked out of the school gates as the sun set, painting the sky in bruises of purple and orange. He was officially a UA student. He hadn't been expelled. But as he walked down the hill toward the station, he saw them. Ida and Uraraka were walking together a few hundred meters ahead. They were talking. Uraraka laughed at something Ida said, covering her mouth. They looked comfortable. In another timeline, Izuku would have run up to them. Uraraka would have waited for him at the gate. They would have walked to the station together, the Deku name reclaimed, a trio formed. Here, Izuku stopped. He gripped the strap of his bag. He didn't run to catch up. He didn't call out. He watched them turn the corner and vanish. I survived, Izuku whispered to the empty street. He took out his notebook. He opened it to the page labeled Class 1A. He started writing. Aizawa-sensei, deceptive. Prioritizes rationality. Dangerous. Bakugo, more volatile than ever. 705.2 m range. Uraraka, zero gravity. High potential for mobility. Seemed to bond with Azuri and Ida. He wrote down everyone's strengths. He wrote down their weaknesses. He wasn't writing about friends. He was writing about competition. He closed the notebook with a snap. Izuku Midoriya walked down the hill alone, his shadow stretching long and thin behind him. The classroom had been silent for him today, and he suspected, with a heavy heart, that it would remain that way for a long time. The locker room smelled of industrial cleaner and the faint, chemical scent of new polymers. It was a sterile smell, one that did little to settle the churning acid in Izuku Midoriya's stomach. He sat on the bench, his fingers trembling slightly as he pulled on the green gloves of his hero costume. To his right, Eijiro Kirishima was marveling at the gears on his shoulders. To his left, Yuga Aoyama was polishing his cape. The air was thick with the buzzing excitement of boys about to live out their lifelong fantasies. Izuku looked down at himself. The jumpsuit was green, a color he had chosen to mimic All Might's old casual wear, but also to blend in. The mask had long, rabbit-like ears, a nod to All Might's hair tufts that, in hindsight, felt childish. The respirator smiled, a frozen, toothy grin designed to project confidence he didn't feel. His mother, Inko, had made this. She had wept while handing it to him, apologizing for not being able to afford a support company's work. The love stitched into the seams was palpable, a heavy, warm weight. But as Izuku looked around at the sleek, professional-grade gear of his classmates, Ida's armor, Bakugo's grenade gauntlets, he felt like a child wearing pajamas to a war zone. Midoriya, is it? Izuku jumped, looking up. Mizo Shoji, the boy with multiple arms, was standing there. He wore a simple blue mask. Why yes. Izuku squeaked. Your costume looks practical, Shoji said, his voice deep and rumbling. Good for mobility. Oh, thanks, Izuku stammered. He waited for more, a question, a joke, an invitation to walk to the grounds together. Shoji nodded once and turned away to finish adjusting his belt. The conversation was over. Efficient. Brief. Izuku swallowed. He stood up, checking his utility belt. It was empty save for a few basic medical supplies he had packed himself. He pulled the hood up. The world narrowed to the view through the eye holes. Just get through this, he told himself. Don't break your bones. Don't be the victim. He walked out of the locker room, trailing behind the pack. Ground Beta. The training ground was a labyrinth of concrete. A fake city, gray and imposing, stood under the artificial lights of the underground monitoring complex. Standing at the entrance, hands on his hips, his cape fluttering in a wind that seemed to generate solely for his benefit, was All Might. I am here! The #1 hero bellowed. Coming through the door like a hero, the class gasped in awe. Even Izuku felt a spark of that old, fanboy delight, but it was quickly smothered by the reality of the situation. Combat training, All Might announced. You've done the written exams. You've done the physical tests. Now, we return to the core of heroism. The battle between good and evil. He held up a small box. We will be conducting indoor anti-personnel battle trials. You will be split into teams of 2, heroes and villains. The villains will guard a nuclear weapon in the hideout. The heroes must secure the weapon or capture the villains within the time limit. Sir! Ida raised his hand, his armor clanking. How will the teams be decided? Lots! All Might shouted, shaking the box dramatically. Izuku's heart hammered. Please don't let me be with Kaken. Please don't let me be against Kaken. Please. He walked up to the box and drew a ball. Letter A. Team A, Izuku whispered. He looked around. Who else had A? In a different timeline, a girl with round cheeks and a gravity quirk would have bounded up to him, holding up her ball, delighted to be paired with the boy who saved her. They would have strategized with smiles, their nervousness shared and halved. I believe I am your partner. The voice was cool, dark, and composed. Izuku turned. Standing there, Wrapped in a black cloak that seemed to absorb the light, was Fumikage Tokoyami. His bird-like head was tilted slightly, his red eyes assessing Izuku with a piercing, unblinking stare. "Oh! Tokoyami-kun," Izuku stuttered. "Alright. Team A. Let's do our best." Tokoyami nodded, crossing his arms. "Indeed. Let us revel in the darkness of this trial." Izuku blinked. He's intense. But intensity was better than hostility. Tokoyami seemed competent. Calm. He wasn't looking at Izuku with disdain, merely professional detachment. "Now, let's draw the first matchup." All Might reached into 2 other boxes labeled Villain and Hero. He pulled out 2 balls. Team A Hero versus Team D Villain. Izuku froze. He knew who was on Team D. He had seen the angry blonde snatch the ball from the box moments ago. Across the gathering, Katsuki Bakugo turned. The grenade gauntlets on his arms clanked. His eyes locked onto Izuku's mask. Under the fabric, Izuku could feel the heat of that glare. Standing next to Bakugo, adjusting his helmet, was Tenya Ida. "So," Bakugo said, his voice low enough to carry only to Izuku, but sharp enough to cut glass. "I get to crush you properly this time, Deku." Izuku's breath hitched in his respirator. The first battle. Heroes, Izuku Midoriya Fumikage Tokoyami. Villains, Katsuki Bakugo Tenya Ida. There was no "you can do it" from Uraraka. There was no friendly rivalry with Ida. There was only the predator and the prey, and a bird-headed boy who had no idea what kind of history he had just walked into. The planning phase. The 5-minute setup period felt like 5 seconds. Izuku and Tokoyami stood outside the massive concrete building that served as the villain's hideout. He held the floor plan All Might had provided, his hands shaking so hard the paper rattled. "You are trembling," Tokoyami observed. It wasn't an insult. It was a statement of fact. "Why yeah," Izuku stammered. I know one of the opponents." Katsuki Bakugo. "The explosive one," Tokoyami noted. "He has a volatile temperament. He hates me," Izuku said, the words tumbling out before he could stop them. "He's going to come for me. He won't care about the weapon. He won't care about the timer. He wants to hurt me." Tokoyami was silent for a moment. Dark Shadow, the sentient quirk living within him, poked its head out from Tokoyami's cloak, looking at Izuku curiously. "That is irrational," Tokoyami said. "But if true, we can use it." Izuku looked up. "Use it? If he is fixated on you, he will abandon the objective," Tokoyami reasoned, his voice calm. "He will leave the stronghold undefended. The other villain, Ida, is diligent. He will likely stay with the weapon." Izuku nodded, his brain kicking into gear. The fear was still there, drowning him, but the logic, the cold, hard logic of survival, began to form a raft. "Bakugo starts fast," Izuku muttered, tapping the map. "He'll ambush us. He won't wait. He wants to prove he's better. If we stick together, his explosions will catch both of us." "Dark Shadow is weak to light, right?" "Explosions create light." Tokoyami nodded grimly. "A keen observation. His quirk is a natural counter to mine, so we split up," Izuku said. He looked at the dark corridor leading into the building. I'll take the main route. I'll make noise. I'll draw him out." "You intend to be bait," Tokoyami said. "It's the only way," Izuku said, his voice dropping. "I can't beat him in a fight. Not without breaking myself. But I can keep him busy. I know his moves. I've watched him for years. While I distract him, you use Dark Shadow to sneak up the ventilation shafts or the exterior windows and capture the weapon." Tokoyami studied him. In most shonen narratives, the partner would object. "No, we fight together. I won't let you sacrifice yourself." But Tokoyami was a pragmatist, and they weren't friends. They were colleagues assigned a mission. "A sacrificial pawn strategy," Tokoyami murmured. "Very well. If you are certain you can survive his onslaught, I will secure the victory from the shadows." "I'm not certain," Izuku whispered. "But I have to try. Start." All Might's voice boomed over the loudspeakers. Izuku took a deep breath. "Go." Tokoyami vanished, melting into the shadows of the side alley to scale the building. Izuku stepped through the front door alone. Inside the stronghold, the hallways were dim, smelling of dust and concrete. Izuku walked down the center of the corridor. His footsteps echoed. Clack. 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 He was terrified. Every shadow looked like a grenade. Every corner looked like a trap. He's coming. I know he is. I'm here, Kaken! Izuku shouted, his voice cracking slightly. Come and get me! It was a taunt he didn't mean, but it was necessary. He had to be the lightning rod, and the lightning struck. From across corridor to his right, a figure lunged out. No stealth. No hesitation. DKU. Bakugo flew through the air, his right hand pulled back, the pin of his gauntlet glinting. Izuku didn't freeze. He had played this scene in his head 1,000 times since the team announcement. Right hook. He always starts with a right hook. Izuku ducked. He didn't try to catch the arm. He didn't try to flip him. He dropped to his knees and slid forward, the concrete shredding the fabric of his costume. Boom! The explosion detonated where Izuku's head had been a fraction of a second ago. The heat singed his bunny ears. The shockwave rattled his teeth. You little rat! Bakugo roared, twisting in midair using a blast from his left hand to right himself. He landed and spun, eyes wild. Don't you dare dodge me! Izuku scrambled to his feet and ran. Stop running! Bakugo screamed, launching himself down the hallway with explosive bursts. Izuku turned a corner, panting. I can't fight him. If I use one for all, I might kill him. If I don't, he kills me. I just have to buy time. He reached for the capture tape at his waist. Tokoyami needs 5 minutes. I have to survive 5 minutes with a monster. The monitoring room. The rest of Class 1A watched the screens with wide eyes. That guy, Bakugo, is he crazy? Kirishima asked, pointing at the screen. He's not even acting like a villain. He looks like a murderer. His anger seems personal, Jayorozu noted, her brow furrowed. There is no tactical advantage to leaving the stronghold completely unguarded. He is abandoning his partner. But look at Midoriya, Kaminari pointed out. He's not fighting back. He's just running away. Ribbit. He has no choice, Ajui said. Bakugo is strong. Midoriya broke his finger just throwing a ball yesterday. In a close-quarters fight, he's at a disadvantage. In the back of the group, Uraraka watched silently. She saw the terror in Izuku's body language, the way he flinched, the way he frantically checked behind him. He's scared, she thought. Really scared. Why did he want to be a hero if he's this afraid? She looked at Ida on the other screen. He was pacing around the weapon room, muttering to himself, completely unaware that his partner had gone rogue. Young Bakugo. All Might shouted into the microphone. You are abandoning the objective. That is poor villainy. Shut up. Bakugo's voice crackled back over the comms. I'll win by wiping out the enemy team. Just watch. The hunt. Izuku skidded into a large storage room on the 3rd floor. It was filled with pillars, good for cover. Hide. Ambush. Run. He pressed his back against a pillar. His heart sounded like a drum in his ears. I know you're in here, Deku. Bakugo's voice echoed off the concrete walls. Thud. Thud. His heavy boots drew closer. You tricked me, Bakugo hissed. All these years. Pretending to be quirkless. Watching me. Laughing at me. I wasn't laughing. Izuku shouted from behind the pillar. He couldn't help it. I admired you, Kaken. You were amazing. Don't look down on me. Bakugo blasted the pillar. Chunks of concrete flew everywhere. Izuku shielded his face, coughing in the dust. He bolted for the next pillar. He's not listening. He never listens. Bakugo saw the movement. He grinned, feral and sharp. He raised his right gauntlet. His finger hovered over the pin. Since you like analyzing so much, Bakugo said, his voice dropping dangerously low. Let's see you analyze this. He pulled the pin. Young Bakugo, stop. All Might's voice screamed. Are you trying to kill him? He won't die if he dodges. The hallway lit up with the brightness of the sun. Izuku's eyes widened. In canon, Uraraka had told him where she was. He had a plan to use the blast to break the ceiling. Here, he had nothing but the instinct to live. If that hits me, I'm dead. Izuku didn't jump up. He dove sideways, crashing through a stack of wooden crates, curling into the smallest ball possible. Boom! The blast was catastrophic. It tore through the corridor, incinerating the pillars, blowing out the windows on the side of the building. The heat wave washed over Izuku, scorching his back, melting the rubber of his mask. He screamed as the shockwave slammed him into the wall. Silence followed, save for the crackle of small fires and the sound of falling debris. Bakugo panted, smoke rising from his gauntlet. Come on out, Deku. Playtime is over. Izuku lay in the rubble. His costume was shredded. His left shoulder was burned. His ears were ringing so loud he couldn't hear his own thoughts. I'm alive. I'm alive. He touched his earpiece. It was crackling but functional. Tokoemi. Izuku wheezed. Status? There was a pause. Then, the calm voice of the bird boy cut through the static. I have located the weapon. 5th floor. Ida is guarding it. He has cleared the room of furniture. It is bright. Dark Shadow is timid. Bakugo, just used a massive blast. Izuku coughed, spitting out blood. The building is unstable. Ida, tell him the building is collapsing. A bluff? Logic, Izuku gasped, forcing himself to stand up. His legs shook. Ida is serious. If he thinks the structure is compromised, he'll hesitate. Understood. And you? Izuku looked through the smoke. Bakugo was walking toward him, hands sparking. I have one move left, Izuku whispered. Do it now. The weapon room. Tenya Ida stood guard by the papier-mâché bomb. He was vibrating with indignation. Bakugo is a fool. Ida ranted to the empty room. Leaving the stronghold. Using excessive force. This is not how a true villain operates. A true villain is calculating. Precise. He adjusted his glasses. He had cleared the room to ensure no one could sneak up on him. Suddenly, a shadow stretched across the floor. Who goes there? Ida shouted, striking a pose. I am the evil genius protecting this. The building is compromised. Tokoemi stepped out of the stairwell. He wasn't in a fighting stance. He looked calm. What? Ida blinked. Your partner just detonated a high-yield explosive on the load-bearing pillars of the 3rd floor, Tokoemi said smoothly. The structural integrity is failing. If we continue to fight, we risk burial. Ida froze. Failing? But this is a training exercise. Surely safety measures. Look at the cracks. Tokoemi pointed to a hairline fracture in the wall, which had been there before, but Ida didn't know that. Do you wish to be crushed for the sake of a grade? Ida hesitated. His hero instincts, the desire to ensure safety, warred with his roleplay. This is highly irregular. Ida stammered. Dark Shadow, Tokoemi whispered. The shadow monster elongated, slithering across the floor while Ida was looking at the wall. Ida snapped his head back. A trick! He revved his engines. Recipro burst. He moved fast, a blur of speed. He aimed a kick at Tokoemi. Tokoemi blocked with his own arms, grunting as he was knocked back. But Dark Shadow didn't retreat. It wasn't aiming for Ida. It snatched the capture tape from Tokoemi's belt and whipped it around the base of the weapon. What? Ida gasped, skidding to a halt. The objective, Tokoemi said, rubbing his bruised arm, was the weapon, the 3rd floor. Bakugo lunged through the smoke. Found you. He aimed a blast at Izuku's face. Izuku didn't dodge this time. He stepped into the guard. He channeled one for all. Not into his arm. Not 100%. He channeled a flicker of it, just enough to boost his speed for a split second. He grabbed Bakugo's right wrist with his left hand. What? Bakugo's eyes widened. Izuku pivoted. He didn't throw a punch. He used Bakugo's momentum against him, executing a judo throw he had watched a pro hero use on TV 100 times. Bakugo slammed into the concrete floor, the wind knocked out of him. Izuku stood over him. He raised his right fist. Bakugo glared up, teeth bared. Do it! Use your damn quirk. Izuku stared down at him. His mask was torn, revealing an eye full of tears and terror. He didn't punch. Hero team wins. All Might's voice boomed. Izuku's fist hovered inches from Bakugo's face. He froze. Bakugo froze. What? Bakugo whispered. Tokoemi. Izuku panted, dropping his arm. His legs gave out, and he collapsed to his knees beside Bakugo. He got the weapon. Bakugo lay on the floor, staring at the ceiling. The realization washed over him slowly, like cold water. He hadn't been beaten. He hadn't been overpowered. He had been ignored. Izuku hadn't fought him to win. He had fought him to distract him. Izuku had treated him like an obstacle, a hazard to be managed, while the real work was done elsewhere. You! Bakugo's voice trembled with a rage so deep it sounded like a sob. You looked down on me, again. Izuku didn't answer. He curled in on himself, clutching his burned shoulder. He didn't feel like a winner. He felt like he had just survived a bear attack by playing dead. The aftermath. The atmosphere in the monitoring room was awkward. Izuku stood near the back, having refused to go to the nurse immediately because he wanted to hear the critique. His costume was in tatters, revealing the pale, bruised skin underneath. Bakugo stood in the corner, vibrating with silent fury. Ida looked despondent. Tokoemi stood with his arms crossed, looking cool. Well? All Might coughed, trying to bring the energy back. An unexpected outcome. Who can tell me who the MVP of this battle was? Yayorozu raised her hand instantly. It was Tokoemi-san, she declared. Why is that, young Yayorozu? Tokoemi formulated a plan that utilized his teammates' strengths and weaknesses perfectly, she began, her tone analytical. However, I must critique Midoriya's performance. Izuku flinched. Midoriya acted as bait, she continued, looking at him with a mix of pity and disapproval. While effective, it was incredibly reckless. He engaged an enemy he knew he couldn't beat, took massive damage, and relied entirely on his partner to complete the objective. If this were real life, Midoriya would likely be in critical condition or dead. A hero who throws their life away for a distraction is not sustainable. She turned to Bakugo. And Bakugo-san acted on personal grudges, abandoning the mission entirely. Ida-san was too easily manipulated by a bluff. Therefore, only Tokoemi acted rationally. The room was silent. Correct. All Might gave a thumbs up, though he looked a little pained. Although, young Midoriya's courage in facing a superior opponent shouldn't be overlooked. But yes, self-preservation is key. Izuku looked at his boots. Reckless. Unsustainable. Dead. He knew she was right. Without Uraraka's influence, without the confidence boost, without the Detroit smash upward that proved his power, he looked like a victim who got lucky. He looked over at Bakugo. Bakugo wasn't looking at him. He was staring at the floor, his fists clenched so hard his palms were bleeding. We're broken, Izuku thought. Both of us. Midoriya, a voice said. Izuku looked up. It was Tokoemi. Your distraction was adequate, the bird boy said. I could not have secured the weapon without your sacrifice. We walked the path of shadows together, it seems. It was the closest thing to a compliment Izuku had received all day. Thanks, Tokoemi-kun, Izuku whispered. He walked out of the monitoring room to go to Recovery Girl. As he passed the group of girls, he saw Uraraka. She caught his eye. She looked at his burns. She looked at his sad, tired face. She opened her mouth, perhaps to ask if he was okay. But then Bakugo kicked a locker nearby, screaming damn it. And the moment shattered. Uraraka flinched, turning her attention to the explosive boy. Izuku kept walking. He walked down the long, empty corridor toward the nurse's office. The adrenaline was fading, leaving only the ache in his bones and the heavy, suffocating realization that Yui was not a fantasy land. It was a place where logic ruled, where power was currency, and where Izuku Midoriya was currently overdrawn. He touched the A on his arm. Team A. I won, he thought. But I feel like I lost everything. In the silence of the hallway, the invisible boy faded a little more into the gray walls, leaving the light behind. The rain against the windows of UA High was relentless, a gray curtain that seemed to isolate the school from the rest of the world. It was a Tuesday, 2 days after the battle trial, and the atmosphere in Class 1A had shifted. The initial jitters of the first day had settled into a simmering cauldron of cliques, rivalries, and unspoken hierarchies. Izuku Midoriya sat at his desk, his chin resting on his crossed arms, staring at the droplets racing down the glass. His shoulder still twinged where Bakugo's explosion had scorched him, a phantom heat that flared up whenever he looked at the back of the blonde's head in the row ahead. He was taking notes. Not on the hero law lecture President Mike had just finished, but on the social dynamics of the room. Kirishima and Kaminari act as a buffer for Bakugo's aggression. Ashido and Hagakure gravitate toward Ojiro and Shoji. Yaoyorozu and Todoroki are the quiet elites in the back. And then there was the group near the window. Ochako Uraraka was laughing. It was a bright, airy sound that cut through the gloom of the rainy afternoon. She was turned around in her seat, chatting with Tsuyu Azuri and Tenya Ida. I'm telling you, the cafeteria prices are amazing. Uraraka beamed, pumping a fist. White rice is so cheap. It's a lifesaver for my budget. Ribbit. You really like rice, Ochako-chan, Azuri noted. It's filling. Uraraka defended herself. She glanced at Ida. What about you, Ida-kun? You look like you eat fancy stuff. Nutrition is paramount for a hero's engine. Ida declared, chopping the air. I consume a strict balance of proteins and carbohydrates. However, I admit the beef stew is exceptional. They were bonding. A triangle of friendship forming in real time. Izuku watched them from across the aisle. In the secret theater of his mind, he imagined turning his chair. He imagined saying, I like katsudon. He imagined Uraraka smiling at him, including him in the warmth of that circle. But he didn't turn. He remained frozen in seat 18, the zero potential kid, the bait, the boy who broke his own bones and didn't talk much. The invisible wall between him and them was made of his own insecurity, and the butterfly effect of a single stumble at the entrance gate. Midoriya. Izuku jumped, his pen skidding across his notebook. He looked up to see Shoto Todoroki standing by his desk. The boy's heterochromatic eyes were cold, unreadable. Oh! Todoroki-kun, Izuku stammered. What is it? You were muttering, Todoroki said flatly. It's annoying. I am sorry. Izuku clamped a hand over his mouth. Todoroki didn't say anything else. He just walked back to his seat. Izuku shrank. I'm doing it again. Creeping people out. Just stay quiet, Izuku. Just observe. The election. The bell rang for homeroom. The door slid open, and Shota Aizawa shuffled in. He looked more tired than usual, his bandages from whatever patrol he'd done the night before peeking out from under his scarf. Morning, he grunted. Today's homeroom business is deciding on a class representative. The tension in the room snapped. This was a normal school activity. Pick me. I want to be rep. Kirishima shouted, raising his hand. I want to do it too. Kaminari yelled. My flowing cape is perfect for leadership. Me. Me. Ashido waved her arms. I'll make the girl's skirts shorter. Mineta gave a thumbs up from the back. Even Bakugo raised his hand, though it looked more like he was threatening the air. I'm the only one fit to lead you extras. The class was a riot of ambition. In the hero course, being a leader wasn't just a chore, it was practice for running a chaotic agency. It was prestige. Silence. Ida's voice cut through the noise. He stood up, towering over his desk. Leading a group is a responsibility, not a popularity contest. Ida boomed, his glasses flashing. It requires the trust of those around you. If we want to be true heroes, we should decide this democratically. We will hold a vote, but we've only known each other for 3 days, Azuri pointed out. Everyone will just vote for themselves. That is precisely why whoever receives multiple votes will be the truly worthy candidate. Ida argued. He turned to Aizawa. Is this acceptable, sensei? Aizawa was already zipping himself into his yellow sleeping bag in the corner. Do whatever you want. Just decide before my nap is over. The voting slips were passed out. Izuku stared at the small piece of paper. A leader. He thought of All Might. He thought of the way a leader inspired hope. He looked at the back of Ida's head. Ida had taken charge during the cafeteria conversations. He was rigid, yes, but he had a moral compass that pointed true north. Izuku wrote, Tenya Ida. He folded the paper. He didn't even consider writing his own name. Who would follow me? I can't even leave my own body without breaking it. He walked to the front of the room and dropped his ballot in the box. He caught Uraraka's eye as she walked up. She smiled politely, a tight, nervous smile. She shielded her paper from view. I wonder who she voted for, Izuku thought. Probably herself. Or maybe Ida too. The votes were tallied on the blackboard. Momo Yaoyorozu, 3 votes. Tenya Ida, 1 vote. Katsuki Bakugo, 1 vote. The list went on. A few people had 1 vote, likely themselves. Izuku scanned the list. Izuku Midoriya 0 votes. He stared at the 0. It was a round, empty hole in the chalkboard. In a world where he had caught a fallen girl, where he had shared a lunch and a laugh, there would have been a 3 next to his name. Uraraka would have voted for him because he was Deku who tried his best. Ida might have voted for him out of respect for his madness. But here, he was 0. I got 3 votes. Yaoyorozu looked surprised but pleased, her hand covering her mouth. I am honored. 0? Bakugo shouted, kicking his desk. Who the hell voted for Ponytail? I did, Mineta whispered to Zero. She's got the assets for leadership. Ida stood up, trembling slightly. 1 vote. Don't worry, Ida-kun, Uraraka whispered to him. At least you didn't get 0. Izuku heard her. She didn't mean it maliciously. She didn't even look at Izuku when she said it. It was just a comfort to her friend. But it stung. It confirmed his status as the baseline for failure. Okay, that's it, Aizawa said, unzipping his bag. Class rep is Yaoyorozu. Vice rep is Ida, since he had the next highest. Wait, no. There's a tie for second place with 1 vote. Bakugo, Kirishima Ajiri, rock paper scissors for Vice Republic. I refuse to serve under Ponytail. Bakugo scoffed. I'll do it. Ida volunteered instantly. I will serve with honor. Fine, Aizawa sighed. Yaoyorozu, Ida. You're the reps. Now get out. Lunch. The lunchroom isolation. The lunch rush cafeteria was a cathedral of noise. Hundreds of students from the hero, support, and general education courses mingled over trays of steaming food. Izuku stood in the line, holding his tray. He ordered the katsudon, needing the comfort food. He walked into the seating area. The sea of tables was daunting. He saw the cliques forming. Bakugo sat with Kirishima, angry eating a spicy curry. Todoroki sat alone, surrounded by a barrier of ice-cold silence. Izuku scanned for a friendly face. He saw Uraraka. She was sitting at a table with Tsuyu Ajiri and Mina Ishido. They were laughing, Ishido waving a spoon around as she told the story. Uraraka looked relaxed, her guard down. Izuku took a step toward them. Maybe I can ask to sit. No. It's a girls' table. That would be weird. I just ruined the mood. He turned his head. He saw Ada and Yaoyorozu sitting together, discussing class policies. It looked like a business meeting. I voted for Ida. Maybe. He walked over to them. Excuse me, Izuku said softly. Ida looked up mid-sentence. Midoriya-kun. Can we help you? Is it okay if I sit here? Izuku asked, gripping his tray tight. Ida adjusted his glasses. Of course. The cafeteria is open seating. However, Yaoyorozu-san and I are discussing the cleaning rotation schedule. I won't disturb you, Izuku said quickly. He sat down at the edge of the table, leaving a gap between himself and the vice rep. He ate in silence. We need to ensure the chalk is replaced daily, Yaoyorozu was saying. Efficiency is key. Agreed, Ida nodded. I will draft a proposal. Izuku chewed his pork cutlet. He pulled out his notebook, keeping it under the table, and began to write about the pro-hero lunch rush. Cook hero. Quirk, appetite. He can cook for 1,000 people in 1 hour. He was physically present, but socially absent. Hey, look at that, a general ed student at the next table whispered loudly. That's class 1A. They look so full of themselves. Yeah, especially that guy with the glasses. He thinks he owns the place. Izuku hunched his shoulders. He felt the eyes on them. Suddenly, a siren began to wail. Warning. Level 3 security breach. All students, please evacuate immediately. The cafeteria descended into chaos. Chairs scraped. Trays clattered. Students screamed and surged toward the exit. What's a level 3? Someone shrieked. It means someone infiltrated the building. It hasn't happened in years. The crowd became a mob. Izuku was shoved from his seat. His tray flipped, katsudon splattering onto the floor. Move! Get out of the way! Izuku was small. He was buffeted like a leaf in a storm. He was pressed against the bodies of older, taller students. He couldn't see anything. Ida-kun! Izuku shouted, but his voice was swallowed by the roar of panic. He was pushed against the glass windows of the hallway. His face pressed against the pane. He looked down. Outside, on the front lawn of UA, a horde of reporters was swarming the entrance. Police were trying to hold them back. It's just, the media? Izuku blinked. They panicked over reporters? He turned back to the crowd. Everyone. It's okay. It's just the press, he shouted it. He put air into his diaphragm, but nobody heard him. He was just a small boy in a green uniform, crushed against the glass. Please stop pushing. Izuku cried out as an elbow caught him in the ribs. I need to get their attention. Like All Might, he tried to channel one for all. Just a spark. Maybe jump up? But he hesitated. If I use it, I break my legs. If I break my legs here, I get trampled. Aizawa said I have zero potential if I hurt myself. The logic of fear paralyzed him. Across the hallway, above the heads of the crowd, a figure soared. It wasn't floating. It was climbing. Tenya Ida had used his engine boost to run up the wall, grabbing onto the overhead pipes. He hung there, looking like an exit sign himself. Everyone! Ida roared, his voice booming with authority. Calm down! The crowd froze, looking up. It is just the media! Ida shouted, pointing to the window. There is no villain! We are students of UA. Let us act with the dignity befitting our station. The panic dissolved. The students looked out the windows, saw the reporters, and sighed with relief. The crushing pressure eased. Izuku slid down the wall, gasping for breath. He looked up at Ida. Ida was glowing with leadership. He was commanding. He was a hero. Izuku rubbed his sore ribs. He hadn't done anything. He had seen the truth, but he lacked the voice, the power, and the confidence to share it. I'm useless, Izuku thought. Even without a villain, I'm useless. Art of the hero name. After the chaos subsided and the police cleared the reporters, afternoon classes resumed. The mood was jittery, but excited. It was time for hero informatics. I'm here! Midnight, the R-rated hero, sashayed into the room. Today, you will choose your hero names, the class cheered. This was the moment. The branding. The identity. Your name is your wish for the future. Midnight declared. Pick wisely, or you'll be stuck with something embarrassing forever. She passed out whiteboards and markers. Izuku sat at his desk. The white surface of the board stared back at him. It was a void. Who am I? He picked up the black marker. The smell of the ink was sharp. In another life, a few days ago, Uraraka had stopped him at the gate. She had said, Deku sounds like you can do it. She had taken a word meant to hurt and turned it into a word meant to heal. But that conversation never happened. To Izuku, Deku was just what Bakugo called him when he shoved him into the mud. It was what the neighborhood kids chanted when he couldn't kick a ball. It meant wooden doll. It meant useless. He wrote the characters. DKU. He stared at them. Can I own this? Can I take this insult and wear it like armor? He looked at Bakugo's back. Bakugo was writing furiously, scratching the board with violence. If Izuku called himself Deku, Bakugo would laugh. The world would see a boy accepting his worthlessness. Without the recontextualization of a friend's belief, the name was just a scar. No. Izuku wiped the board with his sleeve. The black ink smeared, leaving a gray smudge. I can't be Deku. Deku is the quirkless kid. I have one for all now. I have to be something else. He thought of All Might. All Might. He thought of being a symbol. He wrote mighty. He shook his head. Too childish. He wrote hope. Too presumptive. He hadn't saved anyone yet. He looked around the room. Students were going up to present. Aoyama. I cannot stop twinkling. Rejected. Ashido. Alien Queen. Rejected. Pinky. Accepted. Azuri Froppy. Cute accepted. Then Uraraka walked up. She turned her board around. She smiled, A confident, professional smile. Uravity. It's gravity without the G, and Ura from my name, she explained. Stylish. Midnight clapped. Sounds like a pro. Izuku watched her walk back to her seat. Uravity. It was clever. It sounded like a brand. She had thought about this. She knew who she was. Then Bakugo. King Explosion Murder. No, Midnight said flatly. Lord Explosion Murder. No. The class laughed. It was a light atmosphere. Then, it was Izuku's turn. His heart hammered against his ribs. He walked to the front of the room. He held his board against his chest. The class went quiet. They were curious. This was the boy with the mystery quirk. Izuku looked at the class. He looked at Uraraka. She was looking at her own board, doodling stars. He looked at Bakugo. Bakugo was glaring, daring him to say something stupid. Izuku turned the board around. Written in small, neat kanji, devoid of flair or style, was a single name, Midoriya. Midnight blinked. Just your name? Are you sure? Izuku nodded. His grip on the board was tight. I haven't found my hero self yet, Izuku said, his voice quiet but steady. Right now, I'm just Izuku Midoriya. I'm just a student. Until I can control my power. Until I can save people without breaking. I don't deserve a fancy name. The room was silent. That's boring, Bakugo scoffed. I think it's humble, Ida said, nodding. It shows a dedication to the basics. Midoriya it is, Midnight said, though she looked a little disappointed. Sometimes, the name makes the hero, but sometimes the hero makes the name. Izuku walked back to his desk. He sat down.